Hello everybody and a very warm welcome to Crafters TV. My name's Ben Moseby. Thanks for joining us, start of a brand new week. I hope your weekend was good and you are ready for what is going to be a really fun week, but a really educational week as well. Right throughout this week we are bringing back for 1 week only the Crafty Stash shows, all about education, all about helping you to get the very best out of your crafty stash. And each and every day through this week we are going to be looking at a different crafty technique. Just to mention as well, later on tonight we do have a fantastic craft along for you as well, live at 5, and we are all about the buttons and buckles collection. If you've not yet picked that up, you can shop the day for that, and also if you have already got it and you want to take part, all the details for everything that you're going to need for that is up on our socials. But as I say, this show is Crafty Stash. Today we are going to be concentrating on all things stamping, and we've got the fantastic Lily with us to take us through it all. Should be an exciting show, Lily.
Yeah, I'm super looking forward to this one. If you've never tried stamping before, or perhaps you have a few questions when it comes to stamping techniques, then you are in the right place at the right time. I'm going to take things right back to basics, covering everything you need right out the box to get started in stamping, and a few techniques along the way as well. So any questions as well, please do make sure you get those in, and we'll try and answer those throughout the show.
Yeah, it'd be lovely to hear from you. Maybe you are new to crafting, you want to get into stamping, please ask those questions. We're going to have an interactive section at the end of the show where I will fire all your questions at Lily. Or maybe you've been crafting and stamping for a while and you just need a bit of a refresher. Please send those questions in on the socials. We've got Radical Rachel on the socials with us. Already in is Lois in Ohio. PB Brewer Martin says, good morning everyone at CC from GA. This Crafty Stash sounds like so much fun. We've got Suzanne Dawn saying hello, crafty friends, Liddy, Ben and all the family. Julie Palmer says hi all. Melanie D joins us from Florida, and hi to Katie who says this Crafty Stash is new to me, so I'm looking forward to it. Yes, get those questions in. Anything you want to ask, even if you think it's the simplest of simple questions, please ask it and we'll tackle it at the end of the show. And we are going to go right back to basics. We are going to go right back to the very start. And to start off in this show, I think it would be quite nice to talk to Lily about the main tools, Lily, that we're going to be needing when we're stamping.
These are the main tools that you're going to need to get started with stamping. So of course you're going to need a set of stamps, and there are lots of different stamps available to buy. You can be getting clear stamps like these ones are, and when it comes to our clear stamps, there are two main types of clear stamps, our clear acrylic and our photopolymer. Our photopolymer tends to be a little bit thicker than our acrylic, but both work equally well. Both give you that ability to see exactly where you're stamping with them being clear stamps. We also have rubber stamps that you can use to stamp with, and those will give you a beautiful stamped impression as well. So in addition to your stamp set, you will also need a surface to stamp onto. Here we've got some cardstock, but you can actually stamp onto a range of different surfaces. It could be vellums, it could be something like an MDF, it could be lots of different surfaces. As long as you've got the right sort of ink pad to stamp onto that surface, you can be using your stamps with a range of different materials. So your surface to stamp onto is super important. And then you'll actually need something to mount your stamp onto. So something like a rocker block or something perhaps like a stamping platform are ideal to actually mount that stamp onto to give you that ability to actually stamp that image out. Now with some stamping systems, for example if you're using acrylic blocks or something like a rocker block, it's really important to get the right sort of surface underneath that cardstock that you're actually stamping onto, and this is where something like a stamping mat comes into play. A stamping mat is a nice dense foam mat, and it just allows you to get a much more even stamped impression. If you're stamping onto a really hard surface like your glass mat, I know a lot of you guys at home will work onto a glass mat. It's quite a hard surface, and sometimes that can affect your stamping impression. By having a little bit of give to that surface with something like a dense stamping mat, it allows you to get a really precise impression each and every single time. So that's perfect for use with something like a rocker block. And then of course finally you will need an ink pad to actually stamp with, and these days there are tons of different ink pad colours and finishes available to get experimenting with. The number one that we go to when it comes to getting those lovely crisp stamped impressions are actually our quick dry ink pads. Those give us a beautiful crisp clear stamped impression. They come in a huge array of different colourways. This one here is just a dark brown colour, but lots and lots of different colours you can start experimenting with. But it's not just about the quick dries, we've got lots of other different ink pads within the range range here at Crafters Companion that you can get stamping with. It could be your duet ink pads. It could even be some of your fabulous duet colour ballooning ink pads to experiment with lots of different techniques. Or perhaps if you're going to be doing a little bit of heat embossing, your opaque pigment ink pads are the ones to go for. So lots and lots of different options when it comes to the different stamp designs and the different materials you can stamp onto, and also the materials and the ink pads that you can stamp with. Now I'm going to show you a few little samples here so you can see the sort of incredible effects you can create when you start stamping. Perhaps you're not au fait with colouring, or perhaps you're not au fait with drawing, then stamping gives you that perfect head start. It gives you that outline to start applying all your different colouring mediums to. It could be all of your different pens you've got in your crafty stash, it could be ink pads, it could be paints. It just gives you that beautiful outline that's perfect every single time to get adding colour to. You can also start to build up your own background, start to multiple stamp those different sentiment stamps that you've got within your stash to actually create your own backgrounds, as you can see here. And we've even gone in with lots of different colours of ink pads to give you that fantastic rainbow effect. And our topper there has also been created using a stamp and then just hand coloured using some of our alcohol markers. But how about using some of your layering stamps? And layering stamps are fabulous because it allows you to build up that perspective, build up that scene using lots of different individual stamps in different ink pad colours to give you that really fabulous dimensional effect. And finally, if you're using something like a water reactive ink pad or an ink pad that can be diluted with water, how about stamping that ink pad and then drawing out that colour using something like a water brush or a clear sparkle pen? There are so many different options. Really, the sky is your limit when it comes to stamping. It's a fantastic technique, and if you've ever wanted to try stamping before, I think you can see there by the very few amount of materials that you need, it's very easy to actually get started with.
Yeah, and of course, all the things that Lily's going to be showing during this show, you know, the different tools that you can be using for stamping, you'll be able to find on the website. So things like the rocker blocks, which I know we're going to be looking at, you can get those over on the website, and the stamping platform as well, which again, I know that Lily's going to be coming to over the course of the show. All these bits and pieces you can pick up. Please get those questions in too. At the end of the show, we're going to have an interactive segment. So any questions that you've got, we'll compile them all together and we will sit down for sort of the last 10 minutes or so, have a bit of a chit chat, fire those questions in. So anything you want to know, maybe it's about the different types of ink pads you're not too sure about, maybe it's about the different sort of ways to stamp you're not too sure about, get those questions in and we will get them answered. We must just say hi to Pat, who's joined us, saying good morning, Ben, Lily, Super CTV staff and all of my crafting friends from a cool but clear New Jersey. Looking forward to the week and learning new tips, and hi to Shaz as well. All right, so let's get into it then, and again go right back to basics here, and we'll head over to Lily where we're going to talk about some basic stamping techniques. Lily.
So I'm going to talk to you about how we get a nice crisp stamped image using both our rocker blocks and our fantastic magnetic stamping platform using our great quick dry ink pads. Now there are several different ways that you can use your stamps. You could be using an acrylic block, you could be using a rocker block, which is what we're about to show you here, or there are a multitude of different types of stamping platforms available to get crafting with, and we'll show you the magnetic one in just a few moments. But we're going to start off with our rocker block, and these have been around for donkey's years, but they are absolutely fantastic. We've not changed them since the day that we started bringing these to you here at Crafters Companion, because they really did revolutionise the way that we stamp. We make it so easy to achieve that precise stamped impression. Now when we're using a rocker block, I do definitely recommend to have something like a stamping mat underneath where you're stamping. This is a dense foam mat. It's got a little bit of give to it, so rather than stamping directly onto a hard surface like your glass mat, by stamping onto something that's got a little bit of cushioning to it, it means you're much more likely to get that lovely crisp stamped impression. I'm going to take one of our stamps here from our beautiful traditional bloom stamp set. This is a clear acrylic stamp set, and clear acrylic stamps will cling very easily to your rocker block. So all you need to do is just take your stamp, just pop it onto the reverse of your rocker block there. We do bring to you lots and lots of different sizes and shapes of rocker blocks. This is one of our larger ones, which means you can fit your really big stamps onto that rocker block surface. You can see that's nicely held into position there. That's not going anywhere when it's mounted onto that rocker block. And then we're just going to take our ink pad. This is our Seal Brown. It's one of our quick dry ink pads. It gives us that lovely crisp stamped impression. And we'll just remove that lid and then always take your ink pad directly to your stamp. It's going to allow you to get a much more even coverage of ink all over that stamp. And it's just light, gentle tapping. You don't need to grind the ink into that stamp. It's just tapping onto the surface all over that image. And once you're happy with the coverage of ink all over that stamp, all we're going to do is take our piece of cardstock underneath, and this is just some regular smooth white cardstock. And when it comes to your rocker blocks, you've got your two grip surfaces there, top and bottom on the back. You're going to straddle your thumbs at the bottom and your fingers at the top. You're going to press down, so applying nice even pressure at the bottom all the way through to the top, and by using that lovely heel to toe rocking motion, that gives you that beautiful crisp stamped image with just one impression. Super easy to do with one pass of that rocker block. And that's one way that we can actually stamp using our rocker blocks, but we can actually achieve a very similar effect just by using our stamping platform. So we'll move this to one side and we'll bring in our magnetic stamping platform, and this is by an 8 by 8 inch surface here, so you've got plenty of room. If you are working with those larger size stamps, it's going to be absolutely perfect for this. Now the base is actually magnetic, so you can see here we've got 3 magnets, and that's just going to allow us to take our cardstock and pop that into position by using our magnets, and that's going to make sure that card does not move on that surface there. Then all we need to do is we need to take our stamp here, so exactly the same stamp that we've just used, and then just turn that over, so the stamp side, so that raised side where we can feel that impression of the stamp, we want to turn that over so it's facing onto the cardstock. And the beauty of having a stamping platform is it allows us a little bit more time. So you've got a little bit more time to actually manoeuvre that stamp into position. Perhaps you're not quite happy with the spacing of that and you want to manoeuvre that around. Absolutely, you can do that before you're committed to actually stamping that image out. But once you're happy with where that's positioned onto your cardstock, just take the second part of this stamping platform, which is our lid. And this is super useful because just like the base, it's also got a grid line on there, and you've got your centre point marked in the middle, so it's very easy to line things up, especially if you're stamping sentiments or verses that you want to make sure you've got it nice and even and straight. Then to pick up the stamp, all we need to do is just allow these feet around the edge, the spring-loaded feet, to actually take the force and just press down, and that's going to pick up our image there onto the lid of the stamping platform. And at this point we're ready to get inking and get stamping, and it's exactly the same technique that we utilise with our rocker blocks, just taking our ink pad to our stamp using exactly the same ink pad that we just used with our rocker blocks, and just lightly tapping all over that surface. Now when it comes to our stamping platform, it's not actually as crucial that we've fully inked up that stamp. If you do accidentally miss a little bit, we don't need to worry, because it's magnetic in the base. It means that if we do miss a little bit when we press down, and when we do press down, you don't need to use the heel of your hand or exert a lot of force or pressure onto this. It's just fingertip dancing all over that stamp, just allowing that ink to transfer from the stamp onto the stamped image, and you've got that beautifully crisp stamp image. Now perhaps you missed a little bit when you were inking, or perhaps you didn't quite press down fully enough on one part of that image. All you need to do is just go back to your stamp, re-ink that stamp exactly the same technique that we've just used for that first stamp, and then just go over and stamp again. And the beauty of your stamping platform is because you've got that magnetic base and your cardstock is magneted into position, it's not going to move at all. And because we've not moved our stamp on that lid whatsoever, it means that that stamp is going to be perfectly lined up, and you can stamp as many times as you need to. That's also really useful as well if you've got something like a really textured cardstock. It could be a linen cardstock, or it could be a watercolour cardstock with a really deep tooth to it. Sometimes it can be very difficult to get that full image on that first impression, so by having your stamping platform, it allows you to re-ink and go back over that surface to go and fill in those gaps that you might have missed on that first time round. And that's how easy it is to stamp with your stamping platform. Now when it comes to your rocker block, one of the advantages in my view is that it's very quick to stamp with a rocker block. You saw just then how quickly we got those stamped impressions to actually go all over that image to get a very quick stamped impression. Now if I'm creating backgrounds where I'm multiple stamping one image all over that background, like we've taken this couple of little leaves here, we've just stamped those all over that background. It's very quick and easy to do that by using a rocker block. So different sort of uses for your different styles of stamping platform. platforms. Now those 3 stamps that we've just had a little look at there are all outline stamps, but when it comes to stamping, it's not just about those outline stamps that we can add colour to. There are a range of different stamp styles in terms of outline stamps like we can see here, and some of our more solid stamps. When we stamp those out, it's going to give us that lovely high concentration of ink, and we'll have a little look at that in action now. So we'll grab a piece of our cardstock here. We'll do this one using our rocker blocks, and don't forget, whenever we're using our rocker blocks, in order to get the most crisp stamped impression by using that stamping mat underneath, it's really going to help with getting that lovely crisp image. We've got our cardstock here, we've got our rocker block, and we're going to take a couple of stamps here. We'll use a solid stamp next to one of our more detailed outline stamps. You can see the difference between the two. So we'll just line those 2 up next to each other onto our rocker block, and then we'll take our ink pad, and once again, doesn't matter whether it's a outline stamp or a solid stamp like we're using on the right hand side here, same technique of taking your ink pad to your stamp and then just lightly tapping all over that image until it's completely covered with ink. Then all we're going to do is just turn that over, placing our fingertips at that bottom ridge there and our fingers at the top there, and then we're just going to apply pressure heel to toe, rock forward, and that gives you that beautiful crisp stamped impression. And you can see the difference there where you've got your outline stamp. That's great for bringing in different colouring mediums like your pens or your pencils, and then you've got your beautiful solid image there, so it just gives you a different look and feel. Those sorts of stamps can actually be layered together, so in certain sets you can actually have more solid stamps that will layer up with the outline stamps to give you that lovely built up dimensional layered effect. But that's just a difference that you can see there between those 2 different sorts of stamp styles. Also, something else to note is certain stamp sets also come with matching dies. So perhaps you're not au fait with fussy cutting, perhaps you're not as confident with a pair of scissors. Certain stamp sets will come with a set of corresponding matching outline dies. So all you need to do is stamp out those images, bring in those coordinating dies, and that's going to cut that image out all around the edge like so. And that's how we achieve really quick and easy stamped impressions using both our rocker blocks and our magnetic stamping platform.
Lots of lovely comments coming through so far, and that's what this show is all about. I think helping those of you who are new to crafting and in particular stamping, but also helping those of you who perhaps just need a little bit of a refresher. Like Rita Jackson says, I like this show already. She says, I may know some of what is being presented, but a refresher is always helpful. And again, you know, if you are someone like Rita and, you know, you've been crafting for a while and maybe, I don't know, you've just forgotten something or something hasn't quite stuck in your mind, please ask the question. We're compiling a list of questions with Rachel, which we're going to tackle at the end of the show. So fire those in, whether you are a complete beginner or if you're someone like Rita who perhaps needs a little bit of a refresher, whatever it might be on, whether it be on the different equipment that we're using, whether it be on the different ink pads, which I know we're going to come on to and have a look at in just a few moments' time, whether it be about cardstock, whatever that question is, please make sure to fire it in and we'll have that nice interactive segment at the end of the show. Shaz already saying that is something that I have learned already. Suzanne says, not sure what it is, but I'm just not too good with the rocker blocks. I will fish them out later though, put my big girl pants on and give them another go. Yeah, and you know what as well, if this show does kind of give you a bit of a nudge in that direction, maybe to try something that you were a little bit afraid of before, or you know, you've bought, like in Suzanne's example there, rocker blocks, but then you put them away and not use them. If this show kind of gives you a little nudge to go and give them a try, then so much the better. A few of you chatting as well about some of the first stamps that you bought. Crystal just saying the first stamps I bought from Crafter's Companion was the Bella Luna collection, which was last year, of course. Mary McDonald on Facebook says the Nature's Garden Woodland Friends. Keep those comments coming through, as I say, and more importantly than that, get those questions in. And anything you see Lily using on the show, feel free to head to the website. You will see everything there, whether you need to stock up on your stamping equipment, whether it be you need to stock up on various ink pads, and it may well be, as we go into this next section in just a moment and we talk about the different ink pads, you see one that you've never tried before and you think to yourself, do you know what, I'll have a go. Get to our website and pick up all of those bits and pieces that you might just need. All right, we are going to get into the next section of today's Crafty Stash, all about stamping, and we're going to go into stamping with ink pads and all the different ink pads we've got available, Lily.
I'm going to show you some of the different ink pads that you can get beautiful stamped impressions using to really experiment when it comes to your stamping. So we're going to start off with one of these stamp sets that we've got here, this butterfly stamp set, but of course it could be any stamp set that you've got in your collection. We just want to show you some different styles of ink pads that you can be using with your stamps. So we're going to take one of our clear acrylic stamps, this beautiful butterfly from this stamp set, and with this being a clear acrylic stamp, it means that we can see exactly where we're stamping. I've got my stamping mat underneath my surface. That just means I've got a little bit of give. It's going to make my stamping a lot easier than working onto a hard surface like a glass mat. I've got a piece of white cardstock here, and then I've also got my rocker block, but of course you could be doing this exact same technique with your acrylic blocks, with your stamping platforms, whatever you favour stamping with. Now when it comes to your clear acrylic stamps, they will just cling to your rocker block. If you do find over time these are not clinging as well as they did when you first got these stamps brand new, then do just make sure you have a little bit of a wipe on the back of that stamp, and a wipe of your rocker block usually tends to be a little bit of dust or perhaps a bit of an embossing powder on the back of there that stops it from sticking. But you can see that that's nicely firm gripped onto our rocker block. So we'll start off with our, what we tend to say that is the best ink pad for stamping with, which is our quick dry ink pads. And we're going to take this ink pad, and as always with our stamping, we're applying our ink directly to our stamp rather than the other way around to get that lovely even coverage of ink all over that stamp. And then we'll just take our rocker block, and as always with our rocker blocks, placing our thumbs at the bottom, our fingers at the top, and then just rocking from the base all the way to the top there, heel to toe, rocking motion, and that gives you that beautiful crisp stamped impression. And that's what we talk about when we talk about our quick dry ink pads, giving us a really nice smooth laydown of colour. You can see there it's that beautifully crisp stamped image that we've got with that beautiful butterfly. Now all we're going to do is we're just going to quickly clean off our stamp here, so just a little wipe onto there, and then just to make sure that's nice and dry, we'll just dry it off with some kitchen towel. Now with our range at Crafters Companion, we do bring to you our stamp cleaning solution that works perfectly with our stamp cleaning station. Just for speed, we're not going to use this today, but that is perfect for cleaning all your stamps and making sure that they stay in tip-top condition. So we've got our first stamped image there, and with it being quick dry, it does literally dry instantly. So you can see, rubbing my fingers over there, I'm not moving any of that ink at all. It's nicely soaked into that surface. And that's our quick dry ink pads. But let's bring in another of our ink pads that we bring to you here at Crafters Companion. This is one of our duet ink pads, and these are hybrid ink pads. So although we can do all of our water reactive techniques, they actually stamp absolutely beautifully. So let's show that in action by bringing that ink pad to our stamp, just lightly tapping all over that image. There's no need to grind that ink into the stamp. You just want to lightly tap all over that image, and that's going to make sure you've got a lovely even coverage of ink all over your stamp. Turn over your rocker block, and as always just rocking heel to toe, applying plenty of pressure, and that gives you a gorgeous stamped impression with your blue butterfly there. So that's your lovely duet ink pad. So we bring to you a real range of different colours in the duet, so you can get lots of different effects with that beautiful duet ink pad. And with our duets being water reactive, it also means that you can spritz that and give a lovely diffused effect, but we will show that in just a moment with another style of water reactive ink pad. So lots and lots you can get playing with your fabulous duet ink pads. Now talking of duets, we'll bring in another style of duet ink pad, this one being our colour bloom, and these are really, really special because they go on looking one colour, give them a spritz with water, and they sort of separate into two totally different colours, which is super, super cool. So once again, just inking up that stamp, and then we'll just turn over our stamping block, our rocker block, and we'll just rock from heel to toe all over that beautiful image. You can see that we've got that gorgeous sort of tealy colour. But when we bring in our lovely water spritzer here, just give that a little spritz over there. And as the colours start to separate, you can start to see different colours within that ink there. It really starts to bring that into more of a diffuse sort of background style image there, rather than more of a bold design. And as that dries, as that sort of intensifies, you'll get the colour separation a little bit more noticeably. You can see that there, it's already starting to go a little bit more, more differentiated. So that's our beautiful duet ink pads in the colour bloom range. We'll just just give our stamp a little bit of a wipe off, and then we're going to bring in one of our water reactive ink pads, and this one is our beautiful parakeet. So we'll take our ink pad, and these tend not to be ones that we use that often for stamping with. They don't give us quite a crisp stamped image as something like our quick dries, but they give us lots of scope for some fabulous inky techniques. So we'll just ink up all over the back of that stamp, and once again, same technique of rocking heel to toe with your rocker blocks, and then that's going to give you that beautiful stamped impression. Not quite as crisp as our quick dry, but it does give us a fantastic reaction with water. So we'll bring in our water spritzer once again, and you can see as we start to spritz that with water, you can see that fantastic sort of bleaching and bleeding of colour. We even got those really arty drips down there, and it looks absolutely fabulous. So a different technique that you can do with those. How about we bring in next one of our shimmering pads. Oh, these are absolutely gorgeous. And we bring to you shimmering pads in the gold series, which is what we've got here. We also bring to you a silver series. So lots of different effects that you can create, but these stamp like an absolute dream as well. So let's just take our ink pad once again to our stamp, making sure we get a nice even coverage all over that gorgeous butterfly stamp. And then we'll turn our rocker block over, and we'll just stamp all over this piece, just like so, and that gives us a lovely shimmering sort of effect to our stamped image. So not only that gorgeous colour, but as that catches in the light, you can see that gold shimmer as well. And now because those dry a little bit more slowly than something like a quick dry, that allows you to actually go in with your clear embossing powder if you want to give that a little bit more of a shine to it. So we'll just give that a little bit of a dry off of our stamp, just to make sure that's nice and clean, ready for our next application of colour. And next, we're going to bring in some of our ink pads that we typically use with our colouring mediums. So if you're ever wanting to colour with any of your alcohol-based pens, that could be your illustrators, it could be your classiques, your tri-blends, any of your alcohol-based markers, this is the ink pad to go for. It's our alcohol-proof dye-based ink. We bring it to you in a range of 4 different colours, this one being the black. But that's going to give you an image that's not actually going to move as soon as we apply our alcohol pens to it, and it dries pretty much instantly. So as soon as you've stamped this image out, you can go over the top with any of your alcohol-based pens, and you're not going to get any bleeding, you're not going to get any smearing whatsoever when you start to colour. So you can see you've got that lovely crisp stamped impression. But we'll bring in now one of our tri-blend brush pens, and just to show you, by colouring over the lines a little bit, you can see that does not bleed whatsoever, just straight from stamping. That's not going to bleed at all, and you're going to get perfect colouring. And once you go ahead and colour that a little bit more neatly perhaps than that one that we've coloured there, you're going to get something a little bit like that that's ready to be used as an embellishment on all of your cards. But you can see there's no bleed of that ink whatsoever, and that is the beauty of using the correct ink pad, which for your alcohol pens is your alcohol proof ink pads. Now next up, it's all about your waterproof ink pads. So if you're colouring anything in with any sort of water-based medium, and we bring to you lots of pens and pencils that can be diluted with water here at Crafter's Companion, your waterproof dye ink pad is the one to go for. This is non-smear with water, and it dries literally straight away, and we'll see that in action right now. So same technique once again of applying our ink directly to our stamp, tapping all over that image, and then here we've got some watercolour cardstock, and we're just going to turn this over, rocking heel all the way to toe at the top there. You can see you get that beautiful stamped impression, but very, very quickly it's coming with some water. Really, really saturate with that with water, and it's not moving whatsoever. It is literally dried straight away. You do not need to worry about leaving that to dry. You can get watercolouring straight away, and when you do get watercolouring with a stamp like this using your beautiful waterproof ink pads, this is just using some of our aqua pens from the Spectrum Noir range, you're going to end up with something that looks a little bit like that. But let's have a look at a little bit of more inspiration of the sort of thing that you can start to create when you're getting experimenting with lots and lots of different ink pads. So here we've stamped with a opaque pigment ink pad, and then we've gone in with some of our clear embossing powders over the top. That looks absolutely fabulous, even building up the background by multiple stamping those butterflies. Here stamping onto vellum as well, so you get that beautiful effect, sort of an ethereal effect by stamping and layering on vellum. Stamping onto dark cardstock as well. I know we've just shown you stamping onto white cardstock, but you can stamp onto a range of different colours and finishes of cardstock, and it's going to give you a different look and feel every single time. There is so much you can do with stamping, and just by varying up the different sort of ink pad, the different colours, colour, the different style, the different composition of ink pad that you are working with, you're going to get so many different effects, and it's so much fun to get playing with your different ink pads.
Yep, there we go. Loads more information for you there. And if any of those ink pads you need to pick up, check the website and shop for all of those. Don't forget as well, if you are sticking with us through the day today, tonight live at 5, we have got a craft along for you. Tonight going to be looking at the Buttons and Buckles collection. We've still got that showstopper available actually that we had when we launched it just a little while back, so you can still pick that up before the show. If you've already got all the bits and pieces and you want to take part, you can check the socials for the full list of everything that you're going to need tonight for the 1 hour craft along starting at 5, which is midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thank you for all the lovely comments coming through. Lots of you enjoying the show already. Mary Beth Dore says, I love the Craft Your Stash shows. Always something I've forgotten and new tips and hints too. PB Brewer Martin on YouTube says, I have friends and especially my sister-in-law who wants to correctly learn to stamp. I'm sharing it with them. Yes, feel free to share the love. You know, direct them our way, show them these videos because they are going to be brilliant to get people into craft who perhaps haven't crafted before. And like I say, we've got all of these different Craft Your Stash shows right throughout this week, concentrating on different techniques within crafting. And I think we're going to cover off a whole load over the course of the 5 1-hour shows that we've got coming up for you this week. And Sarah Thompson says, I must say, I've been watching Crafters TV for a couple of years and I have never seen a Craft Your Stash presentation before. This is very informative. Well, thank you for that. And like I say, make sure you join us every day this week. It will be this time every day this week. So midday, 7 a.m. Eastern, 4 a.m. Pacific. You can pick up all of the hints and tips that you need. And if glues have you scratching your head, then make sure you're with us tomorrow at the same time, because that is what we are going to be tackling within Craft Your Stash. Today, it is all about stamping though. Hopefully you picked up a lot in the first half hour. This next little segment here, we're going to be looking at how to layer our stamps with Lilly.
So next I'm going to show you how you layer stamps to get depth and dimension to your stamping. So we're going to be working with this fantastic floral wreath stamp set here, but there are tons of different styles of layering stamps available for you to get crafting with. Here we've got that beautiful violet roses wreath. We've got a range of different sentiments that we can pop into the middle, but you can see you've got real depth and dimension by using those different layers of the stamp. Now even on the packaging here, it's actually suggesting the colours of ink pads to get working with to actually create that same effect that we've got there on the packaging. So I've gone ahead and already picked out all of my ink pads. So I've got my crushed velvet, I have got my pale fig, I've got my green topaz and also my frosty jade. And it's working in colour families. So we've got 2 of the same colour families. So we've got our dark and our light of our purple. And then we've got 2 of our lovely greeny sort of emerald colour family there. We've got our darker green topaz and we've got our lighter frosty jade. And by having the same colour family with just different tones, it's going to allow us to get that depth and dimension. A little bit like when you're shading with your alcohol markers. Now to look at a layering stamp, quite often they can be a little bit baffling to have a little look at exactly what's going on there. But with these, they are actually numbered and labelled up. So you've got all of the different stages there. You've got the first one, which of course you're going to stamp out first. And then you've got number 2, which of course you're going to stamp after that first layer, and then the final layer there is number 3. You can see you've got all the numbers onto those different layers, so it makes it a lot easier. It's like stamping by numbers really to get that fabulous layered impression. You've also got a range of different sentiments to pop in the middle of your stamp, and with this set as well, it's actually a stamp and stencil set. So you've got your beautiful little banner stencil there that's going to go into the centre of your floral arrangement. So all we're going to do is we're going to take our first stamp, and when it comes to any of your layering stamps, it's always a case of working in terms of your ink pads, working from lightest to darkest to start to build up those colour tones. So we're just going to remove the backing sheet from our stamp set here and just peel off that first stamp. Now there are a few different ways that you can actually use your layering stamp. So what you can do is, because you can see on all the stamps we've got this little sort of extension there where it's really quite square along that section. What you can do to make sure you get a perfect lining up of your stamps every single time is you can take your cardstock that we're stamping onto, and you can actually pop a little mark in. So you can actually take a pencil and then just draw around that little area there to make sure that you get it lined up perfectly every single time. But I have to say, I find this one so super easy to line up. I actually don't do that at all and sort of line it up by eye. But if you are a little bit less confident, perhaps it's the first layering stamp that you've ever used, then do just draw around that little notch there, and then every single stamp also has that little notch, so you can line those up on top of each other, and it's going to give you that perfect layering. So all we're going to do is pop that down onto our piece of cardstock, and then just bring in the lid of our stamping platform and then just press down, and that's going to pick up our stamp onto the lid. Now, when it comes to layering stencils and layering stamps, I always find it a lot easier to actually work into a magnetic stamping platform rather than with your rocker blocks. But of course, these will still work on your rocker blocks, but in terms of the lining up, it makes it super, super easy with your stamping platform. Another way of lining it up and making sure you get it absolutely perfect is because you've got the grid lines, that grid system on the lid of your stamping platform, you can actually make sure that you line up that notch onto the same couple of squares every single time, and that's going to give you a beautiful stamped impression and lined up perfectly. We'll start off with our pale fig. That's the lighter of our two purple ink pads within this composition we're creating, and we're just going to lightly tap all over that image to start to build up that colour onto that stamp. And once we're happy that we've applied enough of that ink all over that image, we'll just turn that over, making sure all of those pegs are in place in the holes all around the edge. And then we'll just apply a little bit of pressure all over that stamp, just using our fingertips just to make sure we're transferring that ink from the stamp to our cardstock. And you can see when we take that away, if you have missed a little bit at the top there, like we've done there, the beauty of using a stamping platform means that we could just go in, re-ink that stamp at the top, and then just go over and restamp over that section of the top there that we've missed. And you can see restamping, it gives us that perfect stamped impression, just like so. And if we've removed that from our stamping platform, I have to say at these early stages when it comes to layering stamps, they don't tend to look like an awful lot, but it's as we start to build up those layers that it really starts to come to life. So there we go. Let's just pop that back into our stamping platform, and we're ready to go with the next layer. So we'll remove our first stamp. That's ready to be cleaned, and with our quick dry ink pads actually being water-based, it means that they're very easy to clean off your stamps. And then we'll bring back in our stamp set. We've got stamp number 2, so we'll just grab that out of the packaging, the one that's marked with the number 2 onto it, and then we're just going to line this up onto our image. So just making sure that we've lined that nicely over the top of that layer that we've got beneath, just manoeuvring that into position until we're happy. I'm just washing those two areas on the left and the right hand side to make sure they're nicely matched up. And then we'll go in, we'll pick up that stamp once again onto the lid of our stamping platform, and then we'll bring in the darker of the two purples, which is our crushed velvet, and that's going to start to add that depth and dimension to our image. So lightly tapping all over that stamp there, and then just turning over our stamping platform and just applying even pressure all over that stamp there to make sure we're applying that ink onto our cardstock. Turn that over, you can see we've got that beautiful stamped impression, and that is the second layer of our layered stamp. So just have a little look how this is starting to build. The more layers you add, the more depth you're going to add, and the more the image is going to start to sort of make sense a little bit more. This is where the third and final layer comes in that really starts to bring this to life. So we'll pop our stamped piece back into our magnetic stamping platform. We'll remove that stamp that we've just worked with from there, and that again is ready to be cleaned. And then we'll bring in our final stamp here, which is stamp number 3, which is where all the foliage comes into this design. So we'll line this up once again, and this is the fantastic thing about using your stamping platform. It means that you've got that ability to line it up, and the ability to move it around as needed until you're happy with how it's looking. So remember, we had that notch on the right hand side, and we're just going to start to manoeuvre that into position until we are happy with where we've got this lined up. Once again, watching those flowers on the left and the right hand side, I'm using that as almost like a visual aid as to where I need to get that lined up. But with your layering stamps, you don't have to be exactly precise. Having them ever so slightly off, it gives it more of a quirky, more of a sketch feel. So if you're wanting a little bit more of a rustic look, that's going to look equally fabulous. And we'll pick that stamp up, the third and final stamp, we'll pick that up onto the lid of our stamping platform, and we'll go in with our green topaz quick dry ink And the fantastic thing about using your quick dries with your layering stamps, it means that there's no need to wait for those layers to dry. It's one layer after another, building that image without having to stop and wait for the ink on the layer below to dry. So inking all over that image, same technique that we've used for the other 2 layers. We'll just press down all over that stamp, transferring the green ink onto our cardstock, and that will give us our final layer of our fabulous stamped layered image here. And you can see we've built up that wreath from scratch using 3 different stamps there, using 3 different colours of ink pad to really bring that to life. It looks like you've sat and watercoloured that and taken absolutely ages over doing it, but all that is just some of your fantastic layering stamps. Now, as part of this set, you do also get a little layering stencil. That is your fabulous little banner there, and by inking through that stencil, inking through that banner in the middle, that's going to finish that off perfectly by giving you that lovely inked impression in the centre. We've just finished that off using one of our sentiment stamps that's also included in the set. And you can see there you've created your very own topper from scratch. Super easy to do when you've got fantastic layering stamps. And when you start to pop these onto your finished cards, they look absolutely phenomenal. It looks like you spent hours and hours creating that beautiful layered bouquet, but in reality, all you've done is use a few stamps and a few colours of ink pad to build that together. Or how about going bright and bold? Of course, it's completely down to you what ink pad colours, what ink pad finishes you go with. Of course, we use the quick dries, but you've got a little bit more time for those ink pads to dry. You could go in even with your opaque pigment ink pads and heat emboss. Opaque pigment ink pads are great for heat embossing, especially for those later layers as well, if you want to start to add gloss and dimension. But that is how easy it is to create layered stamped impressions using your layering stamps.
All great information, isn't it? All great refreshers as well for you if it's something that you've tried previously and not done for a while. Bookmark this show, save this show so you know when to come back to it. Like I say, we're going to be doing these Craft Your Stash shows at this time each and every day this week. Tomorrow, it's all about glue, which I think is going to be a show that a lot of you will be tuning into because it's, again, one of those tricky areas, isn't it, where we can get a little bit confused as to what glue we're supposed to be using where, which glue is best for what. We are going to be tackling all of that tomorrow for you. Suzanne's excited. She says, I'm looking forward to tonight's craft along. I'll be giving that a go. It's all about the buttons and buckles this evening at 5 o'clock here in the UK, so midday Eastern, if you want to join in on that one. And Sarah Thompson just saying, I wish I could remember my first stamp purchase, but that was back in 2018. I'm sure it was some sort of butterfly though, as those and florals were popular at the time. Popular at the time and still popular now, I think, Sarah. Thank you as well to everybody who's fired in a question. We've got more questions than I anticipated, which is marvellous. Thank you to everyone who's fired one in. There's still opportunity for you to get yours in, and we will be tackling those in a little interactive segment with Lilly towards the end of the show in around about 10 minutes time. So if you have got a burning question, then please ask it. Have a look though at the questions which have already come in wherever you're watching. It may well be that somebody's already asked the question that you want to ask, but as I say, we will put all of those to Lilly in just a few moments time. And anything that she's used on this show which you think might be quite useful for you, maybe it be the stamping platform or the rocker blocks, or maybe you've been looking at the different ink pads that she's been using as well, make sure you head to the website and search for those, pick those up to help you get the very best next time you decide to do a little bit of stamping. So questions coming up in just a few moments time, but I think one of the coolest things that you can do when it comes to your stamping is heat embossing with your stamps, and that's what we're going to look at with Lilly right now.
Heat embossing is one of those truly magical techniques when it comes to crafting, and it is super, super easy to create. All you need to do a little bit of heat embossing is you'll need a set of stamps. Any sort of stamp that you've got in your crafty stash, you can apply that heat emboss technique to. You're also going to need your ink pad. Now, the ink pad choice when it comes to heat embossing is quite important because you need something that dries a little bit more slowly than perhaps a typical ink pad. So something like an opaque pigment ink pad is absolutely perfect. Or we do bring to you here at Crafters Companion one of our watermark ink pads, which is ideal if you want to be using coloured or metallic embossing powder. So we'll be using one of our opaque pigment ink pads. Of course, you're also going to need some of your embossing powder. Embossing powder comes in lots and lots of different finishes. Here we're going to be using our clear embossing powder. And then finally, you're also going to be needing a heat tool. Those are the basics. Of course, you can bring in your anti-static bag to make sure you don't get any residue, but the real bare basic when it comes to your heat embossing, this is all you really need to get started. So all we need to do to start with is grab our stamp, and we're going to use one of these beautiful seashells from the Seas Today clear acrylic stamp set. We'll use our rocker block for this technique, but as always with our stamping, you could use your stamping platform or acrylic block, whichever you find easiest to stamp with. We've got our stamping mat underneath just to make sure we've got a little bit of give to our surface rather than having a really hard surface to stamp onto. And we've got our cardstock here, just some regular white cardstock. We'll grab our opaque pigment ink pad, and same technique as always, just applying that ink directly to the stamp rather than taking the stamp to the ink. It's going to give you that smoothest and most even lay down of ink onto that stamp. And then we'll just take our rocker block, turn that over, making sure we've got our thumbs at the bottom, ridge there, and our fingers at the top. And all we need to do is just rock from base all the way to the top, and we've got that beautiful stamped impression. But of course, when it comes to stamping with our embossing powders, it does not stop there. So we'll grab a piece of scrap cardstock just to protect our surface and collect all of that embossing powder. We'll just take the lid off of our clear embossing powder. Then all we need to do is just sprinkle this, very much like you're applying glitter to glue on one of your projects. You just want to sprinkle that all over that piece there, and that gives you more of a frosty look now. So you've sort of obscured that beautiful blue ink pad that we had before, but don't worry, it's going to look even better when we actually start to heat set that. So we'll move our embossing powder out of the way and we'll bring in our heat tool. Now here I've got a 2-speed heat tool, and when it comes to heat embossing, you need the highest speed, that hottest speed. Now you can't do this sort of technique with a hairdryer, it's just simply not hot enough, so you do need something like a heat tool. Just give that a few moments to warm up off your cardstock. The less time that heat gun is angled onto your cardstock, the better, because that heat is going to cause that cardstock to sort of warp a little bit. So by getting that heat gun up to temperature off the cardstock is going to give you that most professional finish result. And then get ready for the reveal here. So you can see it start to sort of change. You're going back to that beautiful blue with that gorgeous gloss on top. And as soon as that starts to change, just move that heat tool. You don't want to be wafting your heat tool, you want to keep it in one area until that's changed, and then move it onto the next until you're fully heat embossed that full image. And you can see here it's picking up all of that gorgeous detail within the stamp, but giving it that beautiful glossed effect. And I'm just going to tilt that to the light to make sure that I've got all of that area embossed. And then just to help flatten out that cardstock, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat slightly on the reverse, and that's going to help to make that cardstock lie a little more flat again. And you can see when we turn this over, you have got the most gorgeous raised, glossy, see if I can catch that in the light there, the most raised and glossy dimensional effect to your stamping. And the brilliant thing as well about using your clear embossing powder is it creates a resist. So then if you want to go over the top with any of your water-based mediums, whether it's going to be your aqua pens or any of your watercolour palettes, going over the top of there, that heat embossing is actually going to cause a barrier. It's going to create that resist technique. So it allows you to create so many different techniques. There's lots you can do with heat embossing, but what a fantastically magical technique it is. And that is how easy it is to get started with heat embossing.
Told you it was cool, didn't I? You guys have probably seen that many times before, but it's nice to get a bit of a refresh to see exactly what you need to do to be able to achieve that effect. Thank you, Susie D, who says, I am loving the show. And Helen Stewart on YouTube, he says, good morning, everyone. I'm loving this show and looking forward to the other Craft Your Stash shows. Great refreshers. Yeah, just basically make sure you tune in at this time every day this week, and we are going to be covering off a whole host of different crafty techniques for you. Tomorrow it will be all about your glues, so make sure you bookmark it and come back with us. Thank you everybody for all the questions which have been fired in. We've got many to tackle in the final sort of 10 minutes of the show, so whilst we get ready for that, head to the website, check out all the deals that we've got there, various sales currently running on the web, but also all of the things that you've seen Lily using over the course of this show. You might want to go and pick those up as well to help you on your stamping journey, and we'll meet you back here in about 2 minutes time.
I like to get up, chill, relax, get a cup of tea, then get myself sorted. And if I'm presenter, I'll write all my notes. If I'm the demonstrator, I'll get my prep out, have another look at it, make sure that everything is the way it needs to be for the show, do the show. Then what I'll do is I'll grab something to eat, then have another look at the sheets again, making sure the next show's all good to go. Then we do that show, tidy. I always like to make sure that the area is nice and tidy, either for myself the next day or whoever's in. Jump in the car, head home. I will quickly unpack what I need to unpack, and then I get on that sofa as quick as I can. Soon as we go live, I love that within our live shows, I always get the butterflies. Soon as we get that countdown in our ear that we're just going live, butterflies kick in, and within about 10, 15 seconds, I'm going. Butterflies have gone, and we just enjoy the show. Early riser. Oh, shower in the morning. Tea. Oh, savoury breakfast. Masterclass. My mobile phone. Oh, anything with chicken. Currently, it is the weekend, Blinding Light, and it has been for about a couple of years, and I still love it. Apart from jumping in the car, chilling on the sofa, watching TV.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for all the questions which have come in. I know Lily's covered off so much over the course of the show, but we do have a few questions, so let's get to them. Sue Maguire wants to know, what ink can I use to stamp and then colour with alcohol pens?
Great question. And do you know what? It's a super easy answer as well, because any of our alcohol-proof ink pads, and these are the ones that come to you in the sort of red or burgundy coloured ink pad here. These are alcohol-proof, and you can use those with any alcohol pen, whether it's Classics, Illustrators, the lot. Any alcohol-based marker, you want your alcohol-proof. We bring to you these in a range of 4 different colourways, so those are the ones to look for.
Thank you, Sue. Sarah Thompson's got a question. She says, is it better to use the quick dry ink rather than the alcohol proof for stamping when colouring with alcohol markers? She says, I'm not getting crisp lines with the alcohol inks.
Definitely your alcohol ink is the one to go for. Your alcohol proof ink pad, the one that we've just had a little look at, is the best one to go for if you're colouring with your alcohol pens. If you are finding that you're not getting quite a crisp impression, what I tend to do is I'll stamp multiple times using my magnetic stamping platform, or perhaps if it's a new stamp, go over the surface first using a watermark ink pad and then apply your alcohol proof ink pad over the top, and it just helps that ink sort of grab to that stamp a little bit better, and you tend not to get any of the bubbles in the ink, and hope that helps.
C. Lee says, hi all, hello. What ink for stamping with watercolour paints, please?
Good question. That is almost like the opposite of the one that we've just looked at. This is our waterproofing, and these come to you in the lovely turquoisey coloured ink pads. Once again, 4 different colourways, this one being our noir black, and this being waterproof means any sort of water-based medium you pop over the top, whether it's watercolour paints, pens, the lot, this is going to resist that water. It's not going to bleed, those colours are not going to muddy. This is going to stand nice and strong, and it's going to be perfect with all of those water-based mediums.
These are brilliant questions. Thank you so much, everybody. Rita says, I love stamping with pigment inks. Can they be used for watercolours or alcohol colouring?
I would say if you're going to go for your watercolouring or your alcohol-based colouring, I would say definitely your waterproof ink pad for your water-based mediums and your alcohol-proof ink pad for your alcohol sort of pen colouring. But when it comes to your pigment ink pads, you can, if you want to colour with your different mediums, all I'd say is stamp with this, pop some of your clear embossing powder over the top, and then you are good to go with any sort of medium.
Celie says, one more question.
Go on.
Why does it look sort of bubbly when I stamp sometimes? Is that the incorrect ink, or maybe she's using the incorrect cardstock?
That's a good question. Sometimes that can be, like we were saying earlier, about the ink's not grabbing to that stamp as well as it might like to. In that case, just go over the surface of that ink pad using something like a clear watermark ink pad. I know we bring to you one here at Crafter's Companion. Just go over the surface like you'd normally ink a stamp, but then go over the top using the ink pad that you're stamping with, and that just helps that ink pad to adhere to that stamp a little bit better. It can quite often be an issue when the stamp is brand new. It's almost a little bit like a chip pan with stamps. The more seasoned they are, the more you've used them, the more and better they're going to stamp. So do just make sure that you do go over the surface using that watermark ink pad, and it'll help that ink grab to that stamp a little bit better.
Mary McDonald, I mean, this is a great question. She says, I would love to know the best technique to use to do a mirror image of a stamp.
That is a cracking question, Mary. I tell you what's the best way to do it is to stamp onto acetate.
Oh, okay.
If you stamp onto acetate, using as long as something that's not going to dry on acetate, so not something like a StazOn, but something like your alcohol-proof ink pad will do the trick nicely, or something like your quick dry. Stamp onto acetate, then turn it over. Use something like a brayer onto the reverse to make sure that you get that real crisp, even pressure, and that's going to give you that beautiful sort of mirror image. You can do the same sort of thing with your jelly plates and your media plates, but for me, the easiest way is to use some of your acetate.
Thank you, Mary. Diane Hatch has a question, Lily. She says, how do you make stamps sticky again? She says, after many uses, they tend to lose that sticky surface.
I know exactly what you mean, Diane. Some of my stamps are absolutely filthy, so it's one of those do as I say, not as I do. Make sure you keep your stamps clean. If your stamps get mucky over time, or maybe they've got a little bit of embossing powder or ink attached to the reverse, it's the same as cleaning the front of your stamp, that stamped impression surface, as cleaning the back. You want to make sure that's nice and clean and then dry. That's going to help cling to your block. But also make sure if you're using something like a rocker block, acrylic block, stamping platform, make sure that's nice and clean and dry as well, and that will help the stamp adhere to that, but it might just be a mucky stamp. Give it a good old clean and you'll be good to go.
Suzanne Dawn says, when using the duets and spraying with water, which paper or card should I be using?
So you can do that technique if you're just applying a little bit of water when you spritz in. A normal sort of multi-purpose white cardstock is going to do the job perfectly. But if you're adding quite a bit of water, we always say any sort of water-based medium, go in with your watercolour cardstock. But either or will still work an absolute treat.
We've got a question, this one is a common one which comes up actually from Rose, who says, sometimes when I use a new stamp, it picks up the paper. So how can I avoid doing this? Or how can I avoid this happening?
Just make sure that you've used the stamp a little bit more, maybe give it a little bit of a wash. When they come out the packet, they tend to be, especially if it's photopolymer, really, really sticky. But as they get a little bit more well used, the more times that you've stamped with them, the more ink that they've got on them, it will help combat that. But just make sure that you are, like we said before, priming your stamps by using something like a water mark ink pad and then popping your ink pad over the top. That should help with that. But it tends to only be an issue with a brand new stamp. So the more you use it, the better it should hopefully get.
I've got a few questions.
Oh!
No, just a couple of ones. So if you're new to stamping, obviously you've shown us the rocker block.
Yep.
And you've shown us the stamping platforms. Is there, would you say one or the other is better if you're new, or is it depending on what you want to stamp? Which would you say for a beginner?
Oh, that's a big old question, that one. But I would say for me, the stamping platform is more, for me personally, it's more of a safety net. It's more of that sort of security blanket. If you're not as confident, you know that if you've missed a bit, you may have seen earlier in the show, I missed a little bit of one of the stamps. You don't have to worry, you just go back, you're ring, and because you've got that magnetic base, you can go over the top. I absolutely love rocker blocks, but once you've stamped it, if you've stamped it wrong, that's kind of like the end of it. But if you are brand new and you can stretch to a stamping platform, especially one with a magnetic base, it just means there pretty much is no mistakes. But rocker blocks, just practice. The more you use these, the easier it gets.
And another big question. If I am new and I'm thinking about starting getting stamping, is there one particular style of, if I was only to buy one type of ink pad, which one would be the best sort of all-rounder to get going with?
I would say best all-rounder when it comes to stamping, it's got to be a quick dry. It's going to give you that best, most crisp stamped impression. They are actually also water-based as well, so you can, sneaky tip there, you can do a few of the water-based techniques with them, but the best technique for stamping would be your quick dry. Unless you were, for example, a real big alcohol pen colourer, you love your alcohol pens, I'd go for an alcohol proof, but best all round for stamping, number one has to be your quick dries. And
one final one. How important is it, because I know people chat about this a lot, how important is it to clean your stamps? Do we need to be religious about cleaning them, or is it okay if we sometimes don't clean them? Is it okay if we never clean them at all?
Well, I have to say I'm probably not the best one to answer this one, because I am not the best at cleaning my stamps. But what you want to make sure is you've not got any residue on the surface. So quite often all I'll do is I'll stamp the stamp out again to make sure I've got none on the surface. You don't want to have one style of ink pad on that surface, for example, shimmer ink, and then you go to stamp with a water reactive ink pad. That's going to sort of affect that sort of impression that you're getting. So I would say, do as I say, not as I do, clean those stamps. But you don't have to be quite so fastidious, but just make sure they are clean. But some stamps will be stained, but they can still be clean.
There we go. Top advice, and thank you everyone for all of your questions. Right, we are just about done. That was your first crafty stash. Thank you so much. I feel like we've covered a lot in that hour.
That's absolutely flown back. If someone would have said how long's this show been, I would have said about 5 minutes, got about 50. 2 minutes left. That absolutely flew by, and thank you everyone so much at home for all your questions. I love being interactive. I love all the questions. For me, that's what it's all about. So thank you for getting all those questions in. It's been fab.
And we'll do it all over again tomorrow, same time, same place tomorrow. Yes, all about your glues. I'll pop up a post on my page as well, so you can fire in the questions before the show. And Lilly and I'll see you back here at 5 for a craft along. Bye for now.
Bye.